A group of aliens invade the brain of a weak nerd and begin to control his body in order to confront an intergalactic supervillain. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Headspace, from 2023. In a comic book store, a boy called Norman is preparing his work on the existence of extraterrestrial life, which he believes is the only way to solve humanity's problems, such as global warming. While Norman is doing his sketches, Virgil, the owner of the comic book store, says he's closing and asks the boy to continue another day, closing the store while he talks to him about aliens. In a distant galaxy, a space cop called Max leads his team on a mission to protect a neighboring planet from the attack of Zolthard, an alien who wants to become the emperor of the universe. To do this, Max asks Gus to turn on stealth mode and they begin their approach. In a much smaller ship, they manage to approach Zolthard's cruiser undetected. Inside the vehicle, the villain asks his robots why they haven't invaded the planet yet, and one of them replies that they're turning on the mind manipulator. While activating the pillars, the robot notices that the civilization has activated the defensive systems and Zolthard doesn't seem to care, saying that it won't save them. Outside, Sophie lands the ship near the maintenance panel and begins to sabotage the cruiser's systems. When the fifth pillar is ready, Zolthard orders them to fire, but Sophie manages to carry out the sabotage in time and escapes while the villain's gun explodes. Seeing the ship moving away, Zolthard declares war on Max and takes a smaller ship to go after them almost alone, promising to destroy Max and return to continue the invasion. When he catches up with the Galactic Patrol, Zolthard starts firing at them, who are trying to reach a wormhole. Knowing that there won't be time, Gus suggests that they go to the Hole of the Lost, which, although dangerous, is closer. When they enter the gravitational field, Zolthard orders his pilot to follow and he replies that he will lose communication with the mothership, but the villain doesn't care and orders the robot to pass through the event horizon, ending up on the side of the Earth. Early in the morning, Norman wakes up late for school and ends up missing the bus, having to run around the neighborhood to find it. While walking through one of the yards, the boy passes a clothesline and ends up falling over the fence. He misses the bus for good and is found by Sandy, a younger neighbor who starts talking to him. In order not to miss the presentation of his work, Norman decides to barter and offers Sandy his lunch to borrow her longboard. At school, Norman's friends are waiting for him to present his work together. While recording his daily life, Alejandro ends up bumping into Mike, a bully who almost hits him, only to be stopped by Norman, who accidentally runs him over with his skateboard. Mike then lets go of Alejandro and grabs Norman by the backpack, but is stopped by Charlene, who intervenes because she needs him for work. While the group goes to class, the group of aliens enter the atmosphere and their ship begins to heat up due to the friction. Despite expecting something worse, they just fall into Norman's glass of juice and are drunk through the straw, causing the boy to almost choke. As he walks to class, Zolthard also arrives on the ground and starts looking for the trio. As they can't find it, the robots tell them that they are running out of fuel and must take refuge somewhere. Angrily, Zolthard asks the invasion fleet to come ashore to help, but the robot reminds him that they can no longer make contact with the mothership. To solve this problem, the contraption says it can invade the body of one of the humans and use them to find another way to make contact. Looking around, the supervillain sees the principal fighting with the students and believes her to be the leader of the planet, invading her body through her ear. In the classroom, Norman walks to his chair while the aliens navigate along with the cells until they reach his brain. Outside, Norman senses that something is wrong and tries to put it out of his mind, but succeeds in doing nothing but looking even stranger. When class starts, the aliens arrive in his cortex and decide to go out and attach themselves to his nerves, making him get up for no reason. As a result, the science teacher, Mr. Anderson, decides that Norman's group will be the first to perform. Confused by what's going on in his head, the boy starts the presentation very slowly, which gets even worse when Sophie connects the ship to another neuron. While Norman tries to give his presentation, Gus uses the ship's controls to move the boy's arms, making him look like a clown in front of the class. Not soon enough, Gus starts talking to Norman through the microphone, making the boy think he's hearing voices. While his classmates take out their cell phones to record, Max plugs in another terminal, which causes the boy to let out a terrible snort in front of the class. Embarrassed, Norman leaves the room and runs to the ladies' room, where the aliens take the opportunity to introduce themselves to the boy. Upon confirming that there really is someone inside his head, Norman starts fussing and pacing back and forth very agitatedly, forcing Sophie to take control of his body and make him pull his own ear. This way, she manages to keep Norman under control and tells him that they need his help to fix the ship. While the boy is talking to the aliens, Charlene comes into the bathroom and asks him who he's talking to, completely sure that he's going mad. Suddenly, Mr. Anderson arrives and asks what he's doing in the ladies' room. As a form of punishment, The teacher takes the boy to the principal's office, without suspecting that she has already had her mind taken over by Zolthard. When he hears the secretary on the phone, the villain thinks it's the mothership and tries to call for backup, but is interrupted by the science teacher. The intergalactic commander tries not to draw attention to himself, but ends up letting slip that he wants to control the galaxy, which makes Max and the other aliens realize that it's Zolthard. On hearing this name, Norman repeats it and the alien immediately realizes that the group are inside him. Desperate, Gus shouts for Norman to run away as fast as he can, but the boy isn't fast enough and is narrowly missed. While the young man is trying to escape, Zolthard decides to create his new army and takes control of Mr. Anderson, turning him into a zombie who starts chasing Norman. Outside, the boy bumps into Mike, who is talking to Coach Hernandez. Wanting to know what happened, the physical education teacher goes to the principal's office and is also turned into a zombie. Desperate, Norman runs through the corridors until he reaches the exit, which, unluckily for him, is blocked by the coach. Mr. Anderson blocks the other side and leaves the boy trapped in the corridor, forcing Sophie to take control of his body. Using the ship's joystick, she makes the boy run towards the cleaning trolley and catch momentum on the lockers, jumping over the trainer. In this way, Norman manages to get outside and Sophie lets go of control, which causes the boy to fall completely out of energy. Luckily, Charlene shows up with a golf cart and rescues her friend, driving away while trying to convince the boy to tell her what's going on. When Norman finally gets up the courage, the teachers arrive in another golf cart and start attacking the students. To lose them, Norman throws the cart at the teachers, causing them to crash into a pile of garbage cans. With the way clear, they enter an alley where they almost collide with a van, but manage to swerve in time and hit another parked car. As Charlene tries to restart the cart, the teachers appear and start attacking them, hitting the back of the vehicle. To help, Sophie takes control of Norman's body and throws herself into the zombie's car, kicking Mr. Anderson out. Alone, Coach Hernandez tries to control the car, but it doesn't work and he falls face first into the waters of a fountain. With that, Sophie can return control to Norman, who is once again exhausted and asks Charlene to take him to Virgil's store. On the ship, Sophie finds the Requiem 2000, one of the most powerful weapons in the universe, but as they are out of energy, the object is practically useless. At school, the zombies report what happened to Zolthard, who is furious. Wanting to find Norman again more easily, he ends the class early and releases all the students, but Alejandro and Frankie realize that something is wrong and decide to stay there, catching the teachers destroying the school. After recording everything, Alejandro calls Charlene, who tells him that she's going to the comic book store and that they'll meet there. There, Norman tells Virgil about the alien invasion, which makes the man very interested. But it turns out he's just a crazy conspiracy theorist who asks them to wear a tinfoil hat. While they're talking, Alejandro and Frankie arrive at the place and tell them what they've seen, claiming that the teachers are collecting scrap metal for some reason. Upon hearing this, Max says that Zolthard is trying to find a way to contact the mothership and that they need to stop him. Sophie suggests that they go back to school and find out what exactly the principal with the Vegeta hair is planning. Even though it's extremely dangerous, the friends agree to help Norman and they all go to school together, except for Virgil, who asks for his hats back. At the site, the group finds Hernans tearing the door off a car and Frankie suggests that he's using the materials to build something. With no time to lose, the group enters the school and begins to advance through the dark corridors. After some time walking, the group hears a strange noise behind the gym door and Gus warns them that he is detecting heat signatures, but Alejandro doesn't hear the warning and opens the door, causing them to be chased by the zombie teachers. In desperation, they split into two groups and Charlene manages to hide in the security room with Alejandro. With the help of the cameras, they manage to locate Norman and Frankie near the science room and that Hernandez is nearby, calling them so they can hide. With nowhere to go, Frankie opens a door to block their view, which by some miracle works and they are nowhere to be seen. After Hernandez leaves, Norman and Frankie start walking towards the other two when Alejandro sees the science teacher approaching. Desperate, Frankie suggests hiding in the nearest room, but ends up making a noise while dragging the desks, which causes them to be heard by the zombie. Searching the place, Mr. Anderson almost manages to find Norman, who is saved at the last second by Frankie, who throws her headphones across the room, making the zombie teacher go over there and clearing the way for them to run outside. From the security room, Alejandro and Charlene watch everything as they notice a gigantic transmitter being built on the court. When she sees the device, Sophie tells her that Zolthard is going to use it to call his fleet, bringing billions of androids to invade Earth. While Norman passes the message on to Frankie, Zolthard ends up listening to the two behind the door, but pretends not to have noticed. Unaware that they have been discovered, the pair plan to hack into the system and implant a virus in the transmitter. While Frankie tinkers with the digital interface, Gus is amazed and takes control of Norman's body to also tinker with the device, typing in codes that will disable all of Zolthard's robots at once. While Frankie finishes the compilation, Norman calls Charlene and tells her his plan, without letting her know that Mr. Anderson is right on their side. As a result, Norman is captured and it's up to Max to take control of his body, but the boy doesn't have enough energy and he blacks out before he can do anything. Because of this, Norman is captured by the professor and only regains consciousness when he is tied up facing the principal. Now that he has no way of defending himself, Zolthard shoves some of his androids inside Norman's ear to capture the aliens. In the security room, Alejandro and Charlene are met by Professor Hernandez, who tries to destroy the door with a fire extinguisher. Taking advantage of his distraction, Frankie runs after him and goes to the ladder leading to the roof. As soon as she passes, Charlene opens the door and Hernandez falls over the monitors, allowing her and Alejandro to escape. In Norman's head, the androids attach themselves to the aliens' ship and start looking for them. While making a strategic retreat, the trio realize that they have left Norman's control alone and decide to return to help him. Outside, Charlene and Alejandro hide in the costume room, where they find Mike hiding under a donkey mask. Thinking they are zombies, the bully begs them not to hurt him. When he realizes that the two are normal, Mike asks for help and says that they should get out of there as soon as possible, which inspires Alejandro, who begins to plan an attack. In Norman's head, the Galactic Patrol is heading back to the control room when they meet an android on the way. Thinking it's going to be easy, Sophie offers to take him out and kicks the robot in the head, who falls, but gets up shortly afterwards. Max decides he's going to try to stop it and he can't either, so he has to join forces with Sophie to distract the android while Gus looks for a way to turn it off. Looking in the robot's manual, the boy manages to discover that the activation wires are behind the head and Sophie jumps on his back, pulling the wiring and causing the robot to fall completely offline. When he gets closer to investigate, Gus realizes that the android still has a fully charged energy core and has the idea of using it to power the Requiem 2000. From the roof, Frankie goes to the top of the gym and down to the transmitter, but he slips and almost falls off it. As she tries to return, one of the androids takes control of Norman's mind. With that done, Zolthard asks Mr. Anderson to get on the transmitter and call the rest of the fleet. While he sets up the equipment, the aliens return to the cabin of the ship and are met by an android who tries to frighten them with a flamethrower. But Sophie disintegrates the robot with just one shot from the Requiem 2000, leaving only its head behind. Even so, the android continues to obey Zolthard's commands and makes Norman pass on the wormhole coordinates, but Hernandez gets confused by the order of the numbers and skips some of them. Without realizing it, Anderson is distracted and Frankie takes the opportunity to access the transmitter panel and begin installing her virus. Inside the ship, Max tries to prevent the android from finishing the coordinate and throws his head out, disintegrating it with a shot from the Requiem 2000. As soon as he does, Norman regains control of his own mind and ends up giving away Frankie's location just as she finishes installing the virus. Realizing that she is trying to sabotage his plan, Zolthard orders Anderson to activate the transmitter, causing the structure to move and hit the ceiling, knocking Frankie down once again. With his transmitter pointing at the mothership, Zolthard is ready to bring his army when Charlene arrives on stage pretending to be a knight riding a donkey. Despite being crazy, they manage to distract Zolthard and stick a helmet on his head. In the middle of the confusion, the smoke machine starts spinning wildly, which leaves the zombies disoriented trapped against the coach. Mike uses the smoke machine to keep him distracted while Frankie gets out of the steam to free Norman. Even so, the transmitter has already been started and the virus has not yet been activated, which needs to be done manually. On hearing this, Sophie says she can take him there without any problems, but the ship's control has been broken by the android and now there's nothing she can do. As a result, the transmitter signal is activated and the army of androids crosses the wormhole with the mothership. Now that billions of robots are approaching, Max warns that the future of the universe is at stake and that if the androids arrive on Earth, they will control the minds of the entire human race. Even though he's only a teenager, Norman knows that everything depends on him and decides to try to climb the transmitter on his own, passing the two teachers and starting the final climb. At this point, Zolthard finally manages to remove the helmet and orders the invasion to begin, as well as sending the teachers after the boy. Using a basketball, Charlene manages to knock down Mr. Anderson and Norman manages to reach the cell phone, unlocking the screen. At that moment, the coach manages to reach him and throws himself at the boy's leg, causing them both to hang from the computer. Even with a grown man clinging to his foot, Norman manages to hold on and muster the strength to reach the cell phone stuck to the monitor, deactivating the transmitter's signal. As soon as he does this, the mothership goes off course and all the androids inside shut down, which makes Zolthard furious. In revenge, the alien conqueror tries to climb the transmitter to get him, but the structure is too fragile and begins to collapse on top of Norman. To avoid being hit, the boy throws himself onto a nearby rope and slides out of the impact area, taking Zolthard with him. Still furious, the space commander orders his androids to capture Norman, but now everyone is offline and Zolthard is defenseless against the group of young people. After the confusion, the police show up and Norman gives his statement, saying that he didn't see anything that happened. Now that everything is settled, Alejandro suggests spreading the story to the world, thinking of the fame it will bring, but Max says that humans aren't ready to know about aliens yet and Norman manages to convince his friend to give up on the idea. Despite this, Alejandro decides to tell the story by making Norman the only hero, while Zolthard is put in a straitjacket and taken to the sanatorium. Finally, Gus says it will take some time to fix the ship's thrusters and asks to stay inside Norman for a while longer. Obviously the boy accepts and the group begins to debate where to take the aliens first. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.